Hello, I'm Juliette Littman.
And I am Joe House.
Welcome to Ringer Food, the Ringer's new hub for all your food-related content. You may have known this feed as House of Carbs, and don't worry, that's not totally going away. We will be launching 2 new shows on the feed, and the first is Food News with me and David Jacoby. You may remember us from our days at Grantland. Well, Jacoby and I are back to go over the news, sample snacks, share some personal tales of food news, some global tales of food news. Who knows what else is to come? And House, what are you going to be doing?
Oh, my taste buds, my hungry homies, my culinary comrades, we are back. We've done it. Here to tell you that we are reigniting House of Carbs with a whole new slate of tasty episodes throughout the year. We are starting with a football fracas, a gridiron gobble fest. We're doing NFL playoff potluck featuring taste tests of the iconic food item or items of every playoff city to determine which city reigns supreme.
Ringer Food is starting up this Wednesday, January 12th. That's so soon. So be sure to subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, here's to the next 10 years, it's Andy Greenwald!
Is this the first day of the rest of our lives?
I think so. What's going on, man? It's Monday in America. And also, you know, we might have some like international listeners for all I know. I haven't really checked the stats recently. So hello to everybody listening. We're going to talk about some popular culture, some TV stuff today. But Andy, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, Chris. So listen, to celebrate our decade on the air, you know, I did a little dumpster diving to look for some evidence from our last 10 years of podcasting. And the truth is, we are very good friends, but we are also a little bit like Clark Kent and Superman in that we are rarely photographed together in the same place.
I don't really do a lot of like personal record keeping in that regard. I don't have a lot of pictures from my life, sadly, I guess. But like, you know, for a while there, I was pretty into the disposable camera.
Oh, yeah.
And I just never got them developed. That was a bridge too far. And then also, like, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, like they didn't really have a lot of cameras in your face in bars in New York City in the early 2000s, did they?
No, we're grateful for that. We're grateful for that.
Yeah.
However, I can
still become a Supreme Court justice because of that.
The odds are not entirely in your favor, but they're looking up. But I did
demographically, I might not be what you're looking for. I was
going to leave that. I was going to leave that. Joe Biden. That would be an incredible move for President Joey Byron if he was just like, I'm going to appoint. I know all you special interest groups are clamoring, but I'm going to appoint a white, unqualified man in his mid 40s who feels like maybe he could swing it. I feel like. I'm just making this up as I go along here, but that's a demographic the Democratic Party needs to work on.
We had heard some rumors about the early aughts in New York City, but you know what? I haven't seen any photos. Yeah.
I did find there's very few photos of us, but I did find a photo of us from a party, New Year's Eve party in 1997. And I posted on the internet. Great response. Really kind. Mostly, you know what? Mostly kind.
Yes.
I would say 70 to 80% kind. Among the takeaways from this photo, and I hope people check it out, people were very, very, very interested to see your jacket that you were wearing.
Yeah, that's my dad's college leather jacket.
It's incredible.
My late father's leather jacket.
Which, by the way, is a fantastic song. By the Pogues. Do you still have the jacket? People were asking.
It was my late father's jacket. I do still have the jacket.
Cue the fiddle.
I'm looking. I took it. It needs some work done on it. Like there's a couple of like tears in like the lining now. Just because it's like I think at this point 50 years, 60 years old. But yeah, like I still have it. It's a wonderful memento. Both of New Year's Eve and of my father.
In that order?
Yeah.
Our mate Conrad, one of the creators of Industry, wanted to know where it was from.
Yeah, it's from his homeland.
What I wanted to though try to communicate to people that I wasn't really able to do was and then I wanted to interrogate you about this because I have a lot of memories about this night. But the main thing that I remember is that we were like, there's not much on for New Year's. Also, we were underage, so I don't know what we could have, what we thought we were going to get up to. But we definitely were like, let's dress up and tell people to dress up. And so there are other photos too, and like most people are wearing like leather jackets and sunglasses. What I want to know, and I brought a jacket.
You make it sound like it's like Al Pacino's cruising. like we were like,
I feel like it was more like. Tim Robbins cruising, you know what I mean? Like who's a gentler actor. It was not that. But I went to a vintage store and bought a little leather jacket that I quickly doffed. But I was wearing like a silk purple shirt, which is not something that I normally wore or ever wore again.
Britpop is huge back then.
But so my question for you, Chris, is what was the theme? Like, were we just like, hey, remember Trainspotting from last year? We'll do our version of that?
I think it was like kind of like that. And like we were really into Suede at the time. Remember we went and saw Suede at like the Paradise
for my 20th birthday.
Yeah,
we went to see Suede, the great English band Suede. They got their gear stolen the night before, and they had to play an acoustic set, something they'd never ever done before.
I feel like there was a real glam vibe happening right around then.
Yeah. Oh, that Velvet Goldmine movie had come out.
Yeah. So I think that there was a lot of like exploration of that space. That's what we were working with.
So we were like, we're going to have a bunch of 20-year-olds home from college. We're going to have a glam New Year's Eve party. Quick, let me ask my girlfriend Jessica if we can host it at her dad's house on the main line.
And let me see if like anyone will sell us any Pete's Strawberry Blonde Ale.
Yeah, that would be as good as it gets. Okay, well, so that was a nice memory. I feel like that was a fun time.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it was a very. I mean, like those are the building blocks of our relationship and the building blocks of this podcast when you think about it.
Yeah, 15 years later. We would start podcasting.
That's right.
So you could really see, you could feel the gears turning. Chris, I had another thing.
Okay.
Because we talked to again, he disputes this, but we're going to continue to call him the founder of our podcast, David Jacoby from ESPN's Jalen and Jacoby now. And he was once again reminding us last week of his rules for podcasting.
Which we have already broken as we
flouted. And I am not just breaking it. This is obnoxious. I am stomping on it. We are going to talk about television today. We're going to talk about Abbott Elementary. We're going to talk about the Halo show coming to Paramount Plus. We're going to talk about Chris's fave, 1883. But first, I have a question for you, and and this is actually some crowdsourcing maybe to our listeners as well. I don't think we have music for this, but this would be a dispatch from Daddington Island.
Should we? Oh, so we shouldn't use the Chris Ryan sings the Pogues.
Use the Chernobyl music. You know what I mean? Like we're all going through it.
Is this about Sing 2?
No. Do you have questions about Sing 2?
No, I just don't really get it. Like I don't really get.
Oh.
There's just so many sequels in these kids movies now, and I'm just like, when who has the time? And when did Sing 1 come out? And Sing 1 made like $360 million or something?
Yeah, I have an issue with these movies that are like jukebox musicals for pop hits of the last 20 years, you know, where it's just
is that what Sing is? Okay.
I mean, there is some upside, such as my younger daughter requests Daft Punk. So I think she would have done really well at our New Year's Eve 1997 party. She's not so good at staying up late, but neither am I anymore, honestly. So, but it's not about Sing. It's not about an animated movie per se, but this is the realm of possibility. So today I'm driving the kids to school and they were like, West Side Story. We want to listen to West Side Story. And I was like, you know what? Daddy's pick today. Daddy's programming the hits.
Mm-hmm.
And this went over terribly. This was not well received.
Wait,
but then,
they wanted to listen to West Side Story.
Yes.
They have not seen West Side Story, I would imagine.
We started watching it with them, yes.
Okay.
But I had forgotten that we had shown our older daughter the original West Side Story a number of years ago, which caused her to be the only preschooler in America deathly afraid of rumbles. She thought they were going to happen, and she was really, really scarred by this. So they watched the beginning of this one, and they finally demanded that we turn it off when they saw Ansel Elgort's wooden performance.
Okay.
They were like, this is not, no. They
Well
were just like, yeah. And anyway, they wanted to listen to West Side Story. I didn't. And then my younger daughter was like, Dad, Mom likes calming music. You like rock and roll music. And I was like, That's a wrap on me. That's as good as it'll ever get. That is the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. So I was like, I felt like this was an opening. Everything is a teachable moment. I was like, when you're not in the car, sometimes I listen to loud rap music in the car. And they were like, no, you don't. I was like, oh.
This is like when they found out that I saw Scream 5.
Yeah, they were mortified. I was like, okay, girls, do you know who DJ K Slay is? No, I did not. I didn't go down that road, but I was like, okay, well, what's something that I could play them that would like not be, shocking at 8 a.m. So I played a De La Soul track in the car, and they liked it. But here's what worried me, and here's where I need your help and your advice. They were like, "This is good," and I was like, "Awesome, I'm so glad." And they were like, "This sounds like Hamilton." I'm like, yeah, okay, it's like reverse osmosis, but yes,
Sure.
Lin-Manuel Miranda likes De La Soul. And then they were like, this sounds like the song at the end of the credits of the Lego Movie 2, which is Lonely Island. Rap. So I was like, technically, yes, in the sense that like, The Roots and John Philip Sousa both use tubas. Right. Okay. So like it's broad, but yes. But then I was like, well, girls, like we need to fix this. We need to fix this. And so
was
then
it the De La song from Spider-Man, or was it like, what were you playing?
Rock Cocaine Flow.
No, you weren't.
Well, they don't say we like rock cocaine. They didn't tell them the name of it. Like MF Doom talks about Toucan Sam. It's fine.
Okay.
My question for you and to our listeners is, and this is going to come up when you have your 15-year-old ward that you adopt. So I want you to be in front of this. How can I do this without teaching them the wrong lessons or vocabulary?
How can you get them into rap?
Like, what should I play children?
Well, don't they have a bunch of like clean versions of rap albums?
Do they still? Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Can you use the internal Spotify Slack to get me that? Can you just get me?
I think that they still have clean versions of rap records. They'll probably be like, Dad, what does that mean? But I think you're in the clear. I'm trying to think of also like what's other like family friendly rap that isn't corny. Like De La's a really good example. The JBs, you could play a little bit of Tribe, I bet.
Yeah.
I think you're fine. The interesting thing is going to be like whether or not you feel like you're ever like really betraying the elements of hip hop, and whether or not like they'll be like, oh, this sounds like Hamilton, and you were like, no, Hamilton sounds like this, like, and
Chris,
you feel like the need to really explain the history of it.
The picture I posted on the internet betrays the culture of hip hop.
That was
every day,
officially the end of breakdancing when we did that.
Every day I betray the culture. Okay, I think so. This wasn't a big deal. I was stressing this today.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Thanks for the dispatch from Downington, and I wanted to start here, Andy. I think so. We have a couple of things we want to talk about. There was a big new Halo trailer, which we will be doing a shot-by-shot analysis of on our Patreon. You can subscribe there. That'll be a 5.5 hour podcast. No, like we mentioned 1997. One of my fondest and earliest memories of hanging out with you, at least in the 2000s, is us playing Halo together. So that's why we jokingly kind of are keeping up on the Master Chief beat here. I also am like going into it with an open mind. I mean, this has been a very, very, very long time getting to the screen for this project, this blockbuster adaptation of this Xbox game Halo. It was originally supposed to be on Showtime. It's moved to Paramount Plus. I think it's gone through a couple of different directors and showrunners. And Kyle Killen is involved, right? And Kyle Killen's a showrunner. Yeah. You and I have kept our eye on throughout like the time we've been podcasting together. Now Pablo Schreiber stars as Master Chief.
Side note, I believe the first guest ever on Hollywood Prospectus was Kyle Killen when I interviewed him for...
Was that HP or was that AG?
That was HP before the split that almost tore this podcast to the ground.
I can't wait till Hillary Mantel writes about our schism.
You know, I've been thinking back to my comments last week, my incredulity over the fact that the Book of Boba Fett just had an episode of Mandalorian in it, like the treat inside of a Cracker Jack box. And I realized that's kind of what happened to my solo podcast.
That's like you were the original bottle episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So I retract my incredulity. It's fine. It's normal. I look forward to future bottle episodes of me on this podcast.
So we could talk a little bit about Halo in general if you want to, or this specific trailer. I don't know like really how hotly anticipated this is, but I kind of wanted to tie it into a quote I saw in Lucas Shaw's Bloomberg newsletter that comes out, I think, on Sunday nights or Mondays, but it's a really handy and wonderfully written newsletter about the state of the streaming industry at large. And there's a quote from Jason Kilar, who is the Warner Media chief. I think sometimes there was a point where it was like, is Jason Kilar going to stay the Warner Media chief?
He's outgoing. Right?
He's
leaving.
Outgoing. And I just want to read you this quote that he has in the, he obviously was the person who engineered the controversial day and date HBO Max movie release policy that gave us Dune and The Matrix on HBO Max the day of their release. And it sounds like it was very good for HBO Max, but very problematic for the movie industry. This is a quote from Lucas's newsletter. This is what Jason Kilar said. And he was talking about Netflix's recent stock issues or stock price issues and their underperformance of where they thought they would be in terms of subscribers for this quarter. Quote, if there is a ceiling, and everything has a ceiling, it will be closer to 1 billion versus 200 million. He's talking about subscribers and change. I'm not commenting on who gets to that number of 1 billion subscribers, but I don't think folks truly appreciate yet just how much value is present in a great streaming service. Now, I think that the overall gist of what Jason Kilar is talking about here is talking about like, will there ever be 1 billion subscriber streaming service? And he goes on to kind of talk a little bit about how there's possible consolidation coming down the line. I think people have speculated that Paramount Plus or Peacock could be one of those networks or streaming services that could be up for grabs if it ever came to that. I got a question though, because obviously Paramount Plus they've got the Sheridan universe. They're making Halo. They're trying to get these blockbusters going. They've got the majority of the CBS library to be watched. What do you think 1 billion subscriber streaming service would look like?
Well, I guess I have 3-point response. One is, this sounds preposterous to me, but Jason Kilar has been right about stuff to a degree that, certainly puts us to shame, but also about stuff in ways that we haven't thought about it, because I think that his business has been to he's been in the future business, which sounds ridiculous, but is actually what he ought to be in. And, our resistance to the movie thing was more in line with Christopher Nolan's resistance to the putting the movies on streaming thing, right? Like movies aren't supposed to be there.
Right.
But then once you put them there, it makes sense for the business, regardless of whether that makes sense for the Turner Classic Film subscriber in your life. Turner Classic Film subscriber has HBO Max, though. So maybe it doesn't matter what that person thinks. The second point I would make is I think you're correct to talk about consolidation, because there are a limited number. There aren't, actually there is a finite number. There are a finite number of consumers in the world. There are a finite number of potential subscribers to anything due to disposable income and et cetera, et cetera. I think there's also the only way to get more past what we perceive of as a ceiling is to consolidate and to say, I know that you previously were not subscribing to HBO Max, but now that we have purchased whoever they end up purchasing or merging with, we have the thing you want. And so now you have to be on board too. And Disney was at the forefront of that with Bob Iger's acquisition strategy, which has, put them in their pole position for the 21st century in terms of we have 3 of the things that everybody wants to watch, regardless of what they think of it, or regardless of what the product is. If it's a new Marvel thing, if it's a new Star Wars thing, honestly, a new Pixar thing, or Disney animated as well. I think as soon as you asked what it looked like, my thoughts went outside of TV and went to other recent news, which was the news that Microsoft was buying Activision Blizzard, the gaming giant, for like $95 a share. And I think it's like, it's just funny money. It was all cash transaction valued at $70 billion.
Right.
And we don't really, and we're about to talk about Halo, but we don't generally talk about video games on the podcast, but the reach of them is so enormous. And obviously, we are the last people to say that a blockbuster game is multiple times more profitable than a popular film, or can be. So that sort of rapacious, just embiggening is what it would look like, right?
Yeah.
It would be one of these services being like, it's not. We have all of the things you like now, so it would be. I mean, I'm struggling to think of the other major franchise tent poles, but
I actually will tell you one, and I don't even know what this gets you to, but I was going to say the NFL.
Right.
So I was like, $1 billion.
Yeah, we have to look outside of the way
is an inconceivable number in a lot of ways, although not inconceivable if there are just fewer streaming services to subscribe to, right? Like if you simply have to make a choice between Max, Netflix, and Disney, or all 3, obviously then like the playing field gets kind of leveled, and you're just like you're talking about your disposable income, even if that number goes up to $20 a month, $22 a month, whatever it would be to have one of those services, because there's so little else to choose from. But I was just kind of like thinking, well, what would be the thing that would get people who don't already have streaming to feel like they finally needed to do it? And to me, it would be the NFL. It would be where you could watch live football. And 2 weeks ago, there was this Bills-Chiefs game, which is one of those sporting events that makes you like want to call your parents to be like, if you're not watching this, you should turn it on, or call you and tell you that. And
that's how it plays out.
52 million people at its peak watched Chiefs-Bills. That's an obscene number that like we haven't really like grappled with in a long time. When you get to the end of the year, typically like 10 or 15 of the top 20 things in the most watched, programs of the year are usually an NFL game. So something like the NFL would kind of start to make sense to me.
Okay.
But even at the most high, like 50 million people watch this game, that's still not 1 billion people.
Well, okay. So let's all pretend to be Justin Timberlake in The Social Network for a second.
Okay. Right.
And this is the kind of thing where actually like getting someone like Lucas would be helpful, because we are fully speculating. We are way out over our skis on this. But you can connect some dots. I don't actually know the specifics of how these deals are made, but you're talking about, I think you're right to begin by saying, how do you get to 1 billion people? Okay, NFL. The NFL is not 1 billion people popular. The NFL is very popular here, and they've done a pretty good job of exporting it to certain parts of the world, but it's not soccer. Soccer is soccer. So you get the World Cup, right? The World Cup is probably reliably the most watched global event in the year that it's on. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right now, I imagine the World Cup rights are sold country by country or region by region. Those types of deals, I think, might be the next to go in this race to globalization that is being led by the richest corporations on the planet. Netflix, we talked about the other week, want to break hit shows globally. And everywhere you watch Squid Game, for example, you're watching it on Netflix. It is not licensed. It is not a franchise that is offered up to different places. It is a Netflix thing, and you have to have Netflix. And Netflix now, in 2022, is in most places in the world, so you can watch it. And it's worked. It worked. So what happens when one of these companies that has the pockets and the interest to go global, and I'm looking at Amazon, let's say, says, we want to be the World Cup place. And also you can click buy a soccer ball on the side of your screen or whatever and have it delivered. What would that price tag look like? What would it do to regional agreements and whatever? It would be insane. And it would cause, nations would bring loss, like it would be an issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Scandinavia would not be like, you cannot take football away from us and put it on your gilded luxury yacht. Like you cannot do that.
Right.
But that is a play, right? That is a play to get to 1 billion viewers. It would be like, we are now the only place to watch the thing that you all want to watch. It's kind of scary to think about, honestly.
Wasn't this actually essentially the gambit of Peacock? Wasn't Peacock put on the timeline that it was put on to hit an Olympics, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
The value of the Olympics to NBC Universal has been enormous, but it's taken a big hit in the last few years, obviously because of the pandemic, but also as we've shifted from when we were growing up, the Olympics were, hey, it's 8 p.m. Let's all settle down with the rest of America and watch 3 heavily curated hours of the Olympics. Yeah. And now everything happens all the time, and you're going to get spoiled, especially if the time zones are non-American. And so the idea was, we have a hub now that can be constantly broadcasting everything. So you can watch it live, and then you can also watch the version of it that has the human interest stories and everything in the evening. That is kind of the play, and it's the role of, I think it would have to be a combo platter. I think this is the point that you're making correctly. It would have to be we need this right now, and it's the only place we're going to get it, which is what causes the World Cup or Bills Chiefs to have outrageous ratings still. Plus, you also need Disney movies for your kids and Star Wars movies for your people who used to be kids, and whatever else, Harry Potter TV show, or God knows what else is coming.
Why I was tying this to Halo is that I'm curious whether or not the path to streaming Valhalla for these companies is a blockbuster or not. Like, is it, because I think that we've seen, obviously, and we've discussed quite a bit, whether it's Netflix with The Witcher or Amazon with Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, HBO with House of the Dragon. You discussed, I think, when we talked like 2 weeks ago or something, you were talking about how like the Harry Potter IP is just out there for HBO Max to kind of get involved in. Whether or not blockbuster hunting is the path to getting 1 billion subscribers or becoming one of the 3 standing streaming services, or whether it's like the Magnolia Network, the NFL, the Bachelor, and or something.
I think it's a volume business, and I think probably Jason Kilar would agree with us, because I think that the HBO Max strategy was given a rocket boost by the cinematic first releases, but it was equally important to have Friends and Big Bang Theory, and have TV on it also. You have to get the high and the low, and it's a volume business now, is what I think it is more than anything else. And interestingly, our podcast has kind of changed with the times, in that, like, Squid Game is a great example. We really loved the show and we had a lot of fun talking about it, but we mainly reference it as a Netflix story in relation to the larger service and what that means. And I don't really think, people who listen to this podcast hopefully are along for the ride, but that's not how most people engage with things they engage with now.
Like a day. Yeah.
The Halo thing is interesting. I think last week Peacock released its numbers basically, and it lost an enormous amount of money, but it lost less money than it lost the year before. And it was designed to lose money for a while, and it's losing money in the right direction for the company. I'm not giving it this.
Yeah, they also said they were going to invest $3 billion in new content, right?
Exactly. I'm not giving it a spin. I think that is the deal that these companies make, where they're like, in order to compete, we have to spend to get the foundation to be a player in the future. And if we don't do it now, we'll get steamrolled later. Similarly, something like Halo, which, as you noted, has had a rocky path towards becoming something other than a multi-billion-dollar video game franchise. So don't play your tiny violins just yet, Cortana. But as a Showtime show, I think it would be judged and viewed as a individual blockbuster swing for one network. By smartly shifting it to Paramount Plus, this is not a comment on its potential quality, it becomes another piece. It becomes another piece in the armory. They are making a play for this type of fan. This is the place you can see this. But remember, once you're here, you can also watch new episodes of Evil and or Paw Patrol.
Yeah.
It is
and Survivor.
Yeah, and it's all part of it. It's increasingly, and I wonder if this is going to be the way we talk. I wonder if we're going to be using this terminology a lot more this year. But when we talked about HBO the other week and the success of HBO Max, we talked about them filling in gaps in their audience demographics by programming more towards, and this is all reductive, so forgive us, but they do say like, we don't have enough female viewers between the ages of 30 and 50, so we're going to make shows that traditionally may appeal to those viewers, and it seems like it's worked with the Sex and the City reboot or
Gossip Girl, Sex Lives of College Girls,
Hacks, etc. So that's what this is about. I'm going to zag here because the thing with Halo, I've just finished saying like, it almost doesn't matter what it is because it's just a chip in the larger game. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that takes some of the pressure off of it. Honestly,
right.
I don't know. I also don't know what its. This sounds so silly for a video game show, but I don't know what its creative purpose is because to watch the trailer, which we will transition to, you guys can watch it. They have done a phenomenal job making the video game, but with real things. Like that looks, you know what I mean? Like good job on that. That's really cool. They
fucking did it.
They did it, man. They also, at least for the purposes of a trailer.
What's the thing for the first game? Is it always like the Covenant? Wasn't there like the Brood or something like that? Or the Flood? What was that?
If we are really, for real talking about like the great sitting in front of a TV moments of the 21st century, for me, it's the plot twist in the first Halo where you're I'm hanging around on this pretty ring world and I'm jumping in Jeeps and shooting aliens or whatever. And then you go into a lab and you're like, this is cool and it's getting a little weird, but this is just a game where I shoot guys that kind of look like mean donkeys. And then you unlock the Flood, I think it's called. And suddenly it's aliens. And there's like 1 million of them and they're swarming at you and bursting out of things.
That's right.
That was great. Good job by them. Good job by Halo. But so I assume they have a lot of that to play with. But I guess what I was going to say was for the purpose of the trailer, they hit a lot of correct structural notes of being like, here is a story that is a TV show that is not a video game where they're like, humanity's ultimate weapon will be its savior or whatever. And they, filling in backstory or whatever. The work required to do this stuff, I think it's probably gotten less difficult. There's that, what is the Pedro Pascal show coming for HBO? The Last of Us, which is based on a video game that I'm not familiar with, but was a sensation. And I would imagine that the narrative, just the level of skill in the narrative or the complexity of the narrative of a later video game like The Last of Us is probably at a much different level than Halo, which was still coming out of the this game is called Metroid, and then you just run and shoot people, and at the end, she's a lady.
Yeah. And
that's the story. Halo.
Well, I looked in YouTube, and I was like, I wonder what the mythology of Halo is. Like, since we've played,
it seems complex.
It's dense. Yeah. Like there was a 35-minute recap video of cutscenes from Halo to be like the entire history and mythology of Halo. So yeah. Shout out Cortana. I'm glad to see her back in the mix.
It's also, though, interesting because the purpose of a first-person shooter was to make a character as anonymous as possible so you could become the person. And also, you could not feel bad about really just playing, versus mode and murdering your friends.
Right.
It was to actually strip humanity from it. So the character of Master Chief is really just a suit with a little Siri telling him what's what. And now they're like, yes, but what if that suit was Pablo Schreiber. Okay. It looks good though, man. It looks like they went to Hungary and they did it.
This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's hard not to add a side of hot, crispy hash browns to your favorite McDonald's breakfast. It's even harder not to eat said hash browns before you get home. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
TaxAct knows you don't look forward to taxes. TaxAct doesn't even look forward to taxes, and TaxAct is a tax software company. It's basically TaxAct's whole thing. If TaxAct did things over, maybe TaxAct would end up teaching kindergarten or leading fly fishing tours. But that's a different story for a different ad. So why don't we just agree that taxes aren't fun, but you still have to do them? TaxAct's filing software can help you do that. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
While we wait for a billion-subscriber streaming service to swallow us up full, whether or not it's led by Master Chief or not, TV, whatever it is now, keeps trucking along. And I thought we could talk a little bit about one of the biggest hits of like just regular old television. It's a show we mentioned around the holidays last year because it's Abbott Elementary on ABC. And they had released the pilot or the first episode to Hulu. I think they aired it, but they also put it on Hulu and they were like, here, soak it up. And we'll see you in 6 weeks or whatever when we do the regular season. Interesting gambit. It seems to have definitely worked because I believe Abbott Elementary saw like 300% growth over the course of 35 days on that premiere episode. So that now, according to Deadline, it's been seen by like 7 million people by now. 5 episodes have aired of this show by now, and they're all up on Hulu if you want to check them out. It's also on ABC on Tuesdays. And it just seems like we've got like pretty much like in this day and age what you would call a hit on our hands, right?
This show's a hit. It makes me so happy. We talked about it last December because we found it incredibly charming and incredibly
also playing to the cheap seats with us because it's a Philadelphia set show that makes lots of Philadelphia references.
Guys, the beginning of the second episode is just a 5-minute joke about the long-running veteran news anchor Jim Gardner and how even like teachers at an inner city school find him really hot. We were gonna like this show. We get it, but I'm so thrilled and delighted by this show and that it exists. And I struggle I think I struggle a little bit articulating why. It's similar to what I tried to say last month. Quinta Brunson, who created this show, makes it look so easy. I hope that you can I don't mean that it is easy. Making any kind of TV show is hard. Making a comedy is hard. Making a comedy that is indebted to a beloved show like The Office, which it is, and she admits that it is, but it's a different level of it. Being indebted to something is even more complicated these days because you can also just watch The Office. It's not like people are like, oh, I'm so glad something that reminds me of The Office is on. You could just watch The Office or Parks and Rec. She's made something that is at once just wickedly funny, but incredibly sweet and earnest in a way that I find very moving. You know, there's been a lot of stories about how actual public school teachers have rallied to the show and celebrated it and feel seen in the show. It's a wonderful reminder about how, in people's desire to put truth on the screen, comedy can do it too, and sometimes can do it more nimbly than an incredibly self-serious look at the challenges that public schools in America are facing. This show is all about the challenges public schools in America are facing, but it's primarily about a phenomenally cast and selected group of characters who see the best in it and do their best in it. And I watch it and it's like every episode, it's a network TV show. Every episode's like 21 minutes. And I'm watching it like with absolutely bifurcated brain, where half of my brain is just dying because it's so funny and it makes me happy and I'm happy that it's on. But the other half of my brain is just like, Quinta Brunson could have made any characters and she somehow picked the 5 most malleable, best characters to tell us this story and then put them in a world that can continue to grow and expand as needed. Where like in the first episode, the janitor is just like has one throwaway line and they're like, yeah, that's going to work.
Yeah.
And so
the conspiracy theorist janitor is my favorite character probably.
And then just the fact that like even in the early going in the first 5 episodes, you can feel the writer's room being like, well, what if the principal was also a prepper?
Yeah.
Or what if we did a TikTok thing? Or what if the substitute teacher who is
Tyler James Williams' character Gregory.
Tyler James Williams' character Gregory. Yes. They're like, well, what's funny about him other than his great deadpan look? It's like, well, what if he just actually doesn't know what he's doing in the room, where he puts up inspirational posters and can't decipher children's art? Like there's just these wonderful little moments. I'm trying to think of a show that has felt as fully formed from jump. This is why they do what they do. And
this is why they have such a stringent development process, I imagine. I was thinking about obviously the durability of the mockumentary, which is, if you'd shown me The Office UK, I wouldn't imagine that we would have 10, 12 other shows that had kind of tried that out, especially shows like The Office US, Modern Family, and Parks all being very successful with those kinds of with that format. And I was thinking about some of those other shows. Modern Family, not so much in the beginning, although I guess if I can expose myself as a Modern Family scholar, when you first start with Modern Family, like the Phil character is like a much more of a like buffoon. I think it's like everybody's characters are much more extreme. But I was thinking about how on Abbott, they don't do the like, we have to soften Leslie Knope or Michael Scott 6 episodes into this or a season into this. It's like they kind of already had everybody at exactly the right pitch going into it. And rather than have a pretty, I don't know, I wouldn't say spiky, but like, complicated main character who is also the narrator of the show, whether it's Leslie or Michael, like Janine is just like, is fantastic hang from jump. And even though she's like, she does things and she kind of falls on her face a couple of times, it's not like obviously like Michael where it's like, I'm the coolest boss, or Leslie who's like, I'm this, the parks commissioner, but I'm somehow also like, representing government participation in America. I just thought it was a really interesting like variation on a theme.
Yeah. I think Cheryl Lee Ralph, who's just phenomenal as Mrs. Howard, in the pilot is a little bit of a foil. But she's also plays it with such like full humanity that you understand that she's not going to be mean. She's just going to do what she's going to do. And so a lot of the early episodes are, if there's a little bit of Leslie Knope in Janine, the other characters are not like the wheels of apathy trying to grind her down. The other characters are wheels of reality.
Yeah.
And saying like, we also are like you. We just save some energy and eat breakfast, so that we have the energy to do it again tomorrow. And the central conflict is so good because the central conflict is just, how are we going to make this work every day? And thus there's no real enemy. There's just the situation, which makes it incredibly pure situation comedy. They actually are striving, and there's but there's humor baked into that striving. It's not the like, let's hang out at a bar and then maybe get in a bar war with another bar, which is Cheers. And, not to disrespect Cheers, they made it work. It's one of the greatest shows of all time. Or The Office, where it's just like, we have to generate this, but the thing that everyone agrees is that the sale of paper in the Scranton area is very low stakes and preposterous, and somehow, kudos to them. The genius of that show is they mined 10 seasons of deeply invested emotional stakes out of that.
Right.
This show's got your stakes.
Yeah.
And you've got the characters. And man, it just feels, you know what, Chris? I feel like this is probably what it feels like to be from Cincinnati today. Because it's really nice to root for a winner.
For Joe B? Hell yeah.
I just mean with this show, it's just like, yeah, this show should be a hit. And I feel like we'll talk about, okay, like what was it? The North Water, right? Which is they're both on television, but they're not similar shows.
I was like, if only more people could see 000.
Exactly. When we watched it, we weren't like
a light to their life.
We weren't upset that more people didn't experience the trauma of the international illicit drug trade. This show is built to succeed, and it ought to succeed. And the fact that it is succeeding makes me feel good. I really love it. And like all those, like all those times I was walking on the sand and there was only one set of footprints, all those times, listeners, when I have not done my homework and I've not watched a show for the Watch podcast, just know I'm watching this. Okay.
Do you want to do any dispatches from the trail with 1883?
Yeah, because
so like last night I was having my personal private time after the NFC Championship watching 1883. And
quick check-in. Was the NFC Championship shared time with your wife? And then you were like, Phoebe, I need a break. I need to watch a show.
No, I look at the NFC Championship
drive.
as like doing my part for the Ringer. Like I mean, first of all, I'm engaged in football.
I thought you were like, this is our together time.
No.
And now, okay.
But then I was watching 1883 and I knew that might be a solo journey for me. And I sent Andy, and one of Andy's big comments about the first episode of 1883 was the quick studies on the part of all the German immigrants who swore they couldn't speak a lick of English, but then were like, when faced with smallpox, all of a sudden throwing around bants like they were in His Girl Friday. There was a really great moment.
All of a sudden they were like, I need to exfoliate.
Yeah, on a recent episode of 1883 where one of the guys is like, don't touch mine wagon. Which I kind of wanted to get put on a bumper sticker and give to you. But yeah, like I just, I continue to love this show. Rita Wilson showed up on the most recent episode, which is now creates an interesting, shared universe with the Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson universe, whatever that is.
Yeah. Her husband was on the show.
Yeah. He was in a brief moment in the second episode, but then you watched the most recent episode, didn't you? Yeah.
Listen, maybe it was looking at those old photos of us, but I just feel like I have to be, first and foremost, I have to be your friend, and I can't let you, thine wagon is mine wagon. Okay. You understand? Like you're not going to cross all those rivers alone.
I know.
And I genuinely, I do not take pleasure in not liking this popular show about a period of American history that I just recently spent a year immersed in reading the novels of Larry McMurtry. So I wanted to check it out again. And I am glad that I did, because I think, first of all, I still think all of this is a very interesting project.
Sure.
Like it is just amazing to me and lucrative for them that the Viacom Corporation was just like, here you go. Send us the daily. You know what? Don't send us the dailies.
Right.
Send us the shows to Taylor Sheridan. The show is, of course, more interesting when it is about the thing that I found interesting in the Lonesome Dove novels, which is, holy shit, it was tough to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the actual struggle of men and women versus nature, and just how literally elemental it is really moving and powerful. And it's noteworthy that Taylor Sheridan is using some of the largesse afforded to him to shoot this stuff, to really like have the resources and the vistas and the cattle to do it, and it looks better than the Lonesome Dove miniseries.
Well, they also make the Lonesome Dove outfit in terms of like their management of the cattle drive.
Mm-hmm.
They make it look like the LeBron Wade Bosch Heat, like that was like, it was smooth sailing to the finals. These guys are like, this wheel broke. you're staying, you're staying in this area between Fort Worth and Abilene. And the amount of resistance the land is giving these people is really fascinating. We've had some bandits pop up, so that's exciting for me personally. I also really love like the sort of, there's a 2-episode, it's called River and Crossing. And there's like a 2-episode run in the middle here where they basically have to negotiate crossing the Brazos with this huge wagon train of German, although every time I turn on subtitles on this show, it says parentheses German Slavic chatter. It's like what we're hearing around camp. But this immigrant wagon train, and every time like anything happens, like, and they're like, they go up to Sam Elliott and they're just like, that was terrible. You said you weren't going to help us. And he's just like, that's the easiest day you'll ever have out here, brother. I don't know why I'm making him sound like Randy Savage, but it's awesome how like every time they're like, that's the easiest river you'll ever cross. But the whole Brazos thing is awesome. And now I feel like once the show got moving, quite literally, now everybody has stuff to do. And like Faith Hill could go off and be like oversee the herd one day, and Tim McGraw can get mad about his daughter falling in love with a cowboy and stuff, like, and just get going, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's such an odd mixture of spectacle and sanctimony. I mean, it is not, the characters go off to do their episodic adventures, like go get drunk with Rita Wilson, but like the reasons for doing so and the way that it ends up, I still feel like there's nothing surprising there, but I don't know why I'm looking for surprise in this show. That is not his métier. That's not what he's doing. You know, what he is doing is reaching broadly and strongly to get to moments like when Sam Elliott is comforting the young woman who's the lead, whose name I'm suddenly blanking on as we're talking about.
Oh, Elsa is the character, yeah.
To Elsa, when he explains grief to her.
Yeah.
Right? And Sam Elliott is acting his ass off. He's great. She's really strong. And it reaches for something pretty universal and true. And it's not fancy and it's not clever. But he doesn't do clever, you know.
No,
and I found that not. It's not just that I found it moving in terms of the performance and the framing of the scene. I was like, there is something. I guess what I want to say is I feel like Taylor Sheridan believes, and I think this is a mission, and I don't even mean to mock it, that like that to him writing is almost like mining. Like you chip at the rock and you chip at the rock and you chip at the rock, and then there's a gem that's been there for 1 million years, right? And that's kind of what that scene functioned as for me. It's like, oh, he unearthed something that was pure and universal. And that was a really earned and nice moment. And then we move on, and it moves very slowly and gradually, but so did wagon trains. You know, it's working. I
Were
guess
you psyched
this
that
weird way to express it.
That they hired a cook?
Yes, but I was like, I kind of wish there was more Lonesome Dove in it. You know what I mean? Like, you may remember the great cook from Lonesome Dove, who not only spends his time just like wistfully digging up prairie onions and being like, this will be the greatest thing you've ever eaten with freshly melted snow on it.
Right.
But is also like, don't ask me any more questions because I murdered my family and sent my wife to hell.
That hasn't happened yet. Although lots of sending to hell has happened.
People have been sent to hell, but like I got to give into it because I think you have already stamped your immigration papers for the Sheridan verse. Like you live there now.
Oh yeah, but I also think that he's writing, like, I think he writes shows that he wants to watch, and I want to watch them too. Like there is some, like at its heights, I think it approaches like, you know, like what Michael Mann tried to get with Last of the Mohicans, or, you know, like I don't think it's trying to, I don't want to say reinvent the wheel. I think he's like, this is what I think it might have been like. And then sometimes there's like anachronistic lines or whatever, like, but I find it to be like a very, very involving show. And so it's really, and I find it quite, if not moving, sometimes moving and very thrilling at times.
I think I'm finding it interesting I'm sort of bucking against it, but the bridle is slipping on, you know? And like, maybe I'm a little bit like Elsa's horse at the end of the episode. Where Sam Elliott's like, does the horse not like the water? And she's like, it's his favorite part. And then he's like, better get to it. And then she like puts the horse in the water. Then the horse is in the water, right? Yeah. And once the horse is in the water,
that's you.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that was the thing I learned from Lonesome Dove. Horses can kind of swim.
They sure can. We swim through our Monday podcast, Andy. We've come to the end of it. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks so much for getting the saddle on again. Thanks to Kai McMullen for producing. And we'll be back on Thursday. We're going to talk a little bit about Pam and Tommy, those crazy kids just trying to make it work.
Have you checked it out yet?
I'm gonna
too. I wasn't. Listen.
No, I'm not getting ahead of myself.
No.
But
you're like Sam Elliott. The next thing is going to be the hardest thing you ever did.
We'll talk to you Thursday.
Great job.